and welcome to the India Today Business Today studio here at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I'm Siddharth Zarabi and with me my colleague Rajdeep Sardesai. We've been having conversations on AI with a lot of gurus, and one such very notable and leading voice on AI joins us now. Professor of Oxford University, Benedikt Frey. Welcome to this show and thank you for your time with us today, Rajdeep.
Thank you very much, Carl, for joining us. And you've got a book out, How Progress Ends. Now, that seems to be an odd title for a book, Professor, because artificial intelligence is on in full swing at the moment. Tens of billions of dollars are pouring into infrastructure, startups, attracting talent. And here is a professor of AI saying how progress ends. What's your concern about AI, and why do you think, is AI as big as electricity as some of our panelists have been suggesting?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot to be excited about happening in artificial intelligence. But I also think that we need to ask ourselves some more fundamental questions. So if we go back to the 1990s and if we look at the computer revolution, it's hard to think of a more transformative technology. It gave people the world's stored knowledge in our pockets, connected the best scientists and inventors and talent around the world, streamlined the research process enormously. And what do we get? We get the decade streak of productivity upsurge, mostly confined to the United States. And we see research productivity falling. We see various measures of breakthrough innovation in decline. It takes 17 times as many engineers to produce Moore's law today as it did back in the 1970s. And so the key point I'm trying to make is that while it's right to be excited about AI, our institutions need to adjust to accommodate the technology. Otherwise, we may not see the transformative impact that a lot of people are hoping for.
Can you give us an example of how you believe institutions should change to accommodate AI, to get used to the world of AI?
So first of all, incentives matter. So I'm in academia, and in academia the incentive is publish or perish. And so when a new powerful productivity tool arrives, you can do one of two things. You can use that technology to do more things, drill more holes, or you can use it to dig deeper into one domain. When you drill more holes, your attention is more thinly spread across multiple projects. And what we see is that the more things you do at any given point in time, the less likely you are to make a breakthrough. So we need to get the incentives right and make sure that we incentivize people to dig deeper rather than drilling more holes. Secondly, just one point. So there are a lot of bottlenecks in various industries. And so in pharmaceuticals, for example, one of the most promising applications of AI is medical discovery. But you still have to go through clinical trials. And unless we streamline that process, it's quite likely that we will not have the impact that many are hoping for on medical discovery. And you see similar things across a range of industries.
Carl, from what you just said, I wonder whether there is a risk of a modern day technological trap. What I mean by that is job losses, economic dislocation, particularly at the nation state level of those who are not able to keep up because there's a race underway and only a few nations seem to be dominating that at present. They control the hardware, they control the technology, the supply chain, and of course the product development as well.
So I think down the road there's going to be large-scale automation. I definitely think that is coming. I think for now, though, what AI does is really reducing barriers to entry in knowledge work. It makes professional service work easier to do. That means that more people can do it. And so what that means, as the pool of talent that can do work is expanding, it means more competition. And so it's similar to what happened in taxi services with GPS technology. So with GPS technology, knowing the name of every street in Delhi was no longer a particularly valuable skill. And all of a sudden, you can get apps matching supply and demand, and that means more competition for incumbent drivers. We're seeing something similar happening in professional services now, but the difference, of course, is that those services are traded. And so if you compare the income of an accountant in New York City to an accountant in Mumbai, the wage differential is an order of magnitude.
Yes.
Now, if AI reduces that productivity differential, what you will see is more work shifting towards India. And that's also actually what we're beginning to see in the data, is that the hiring rate is down in multiple countries across Europe and North America, whereas it's up in places in India and the UAE. So I would predict that in the first instance, we're going to see a wave of offshoring sweeping across the service sector, and many of those jobs are likely to go to places like India and the Philippines.
Rajdeep, that's a very, very interesting take. I haven't heard this take. We all have been speaking about job losses. Carl here is telling us the reverse could well happen because of the wage differential, more and more work would come. Carl, just one quick follow-up on the automation bit, and because you gave the example of GPS and Delhi's streets, in India, there is fear around the automation that driverless cars can introduce from a job loss perspective. I wonder whether we should see it from that prism, because certain policymakers in India are against driverless cars because they believe it will lead to large-scale unemployment that is provided to people who make a living through driving cars for a lot of people in the country.
So we had a very similar debate when elevators became automatic and we got rid of the elevator operator, and a lot of people were concerned about their safety and not comfortable with the elevators being automatic without having a human operator looking after their safety. And here we go. Taking an elevator today is much safer than it was in the 1950s. And so, yes, I think there will be job losses in transportation and logistics, and that's one of the sectors that are likely to be affected. But I think our transportation systems will become much more effective and efficient as a consequence of that, and safety will increase too, road accidents will be down, etc. So I see it as a positive development, but we need to be mindful that, those positive development can also bring some disruptions to some workers.
Which brings me to what you've said in a recent article that you wrote, that a deflating AI bubble, these are your words, maybe just what the tech industry needs, that a deflating AI bubble could drive AI to be more efficient, to innovate, and through directed technical change. Try and explain that for us. There's this abundance of funding. Everyone's talking about AI. Do you, in the first instance, believe it's a bit of a bubble? And why do you think that it's important to deflate that bubble at the moment?
I think we are in a bubble, and I think, if you look at various surveys, AI use has actually been declining since last summer. And what you need to justify current valuations is an upsurge in use cases. And they may very well materialize down the road, but it's probably going to take several years. And so I do think that we are looking at a bubble bursting before we see the productivity gains from AI taking off.
That's interesting, because you're the first one who's come in a way and been skeptical about the bubble bursting. Most of them believe that we are now on a, as I said, one of our earlier panelists even said that AI is like what electricity did to the world. It's going to be transforming the world for centuries. But go ahead.
Well, look, you can have a transformative technology and low margins, right? And so it's amazing that we can fly, but the airline industry is not very profitable, right? And then if you look at the AI industry, you're seeing more and more competition from Chinese open source models. That's going to push down margins. And so you can have both at the same time. You can have AI being the most transformative technology since electricity, and there still being a bubble.
Since you spoke about this bubble and the likelihood of it bursting, what would be the trigger? Would it be that many corporations, the users, who after investing money are not seeing that much productivity gains due to deployment of AI, would that be the trigger? Or would it just be the sheer cost differential of the open source models that you indicated? What could be the trigger, just as the 2008 crisis was on account of subprime mortgages, and that led a cascading downfall, what could be the specific trigger, Carl?
Well, I think all you need is essentially a shift in sentiment, and so it could have to do with OpenAI's revenues not living up to the expectation. It could be some unused capacity related to data centers. It could have to do with concerns of firms taking some of their AI infrastructure investments off balance sheet. So there's a whole range of possibilities that could trigger it. I think the more important question is what's then going to happen after. And as you mentioned earlier, I think this could be something positive actually for AI. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, the reason that the steam engine became the key driver of it was that James Watt, through his separate condenser, made it energy efficient. AI is still waiting for its separate condenser moment. And the reason that it hasn't emerged is that it's relatively easy to fund the rollout of AI infrastructure as things stand today. But that will not be the case when the bubble bursts. And what firms will then have to do is to focus more on energy and data efficiency, because AI models are not nearly as compute or data efficient as humans are. We can learn from just a few examples, and we can generalize to entirely new situations from that. And that's the kind of AI we need, right. AI that is robust, where it doesn't just perform well if the use case or the situation was in the training data, it actually performs well under unseen circumstances.
Carl, this point that you make is very, very important. It's not just an academic debate in India, and I can tell you with just one example, $15 billion being invested by Google in the state of Andhra Pradesh on AI data centers, and around that many other hopes that it will lead to an ecosystem development. And there are other examples of large Indian groups doubling down on data center and AI infrastructure plans. So Rajdeep, it's actually a very, very important question in the Indian context. The bubble bursting will not be something that will be on distant shores, just as previous crises have taught us, the dot-com bubble, the Y2K example, the 2008 example, it could hit home as well, Rajdeep.
But at the same time, Professor, you mentioned the need for new durable use cases to prevent the AI bubble burst. In a sense, a cautionary tone, but what are these emerging use cases that you see in 2026 that are promising, that will reverse the adoption slowdown that's taking place, that will encourage people to embrace AI? Are there specific areas that AI should focus on rather than being this general all-encompassing technology?
So I think two things need to happen. If you hire an intern, that intern is going to be a lot better in 6 months from now, learning on the job. Right now, we don't have AI that learns on the job the way an intern does. So we need AI that's capable of learning as it's being used and being trained that way. Secondly, we need AI that is resilient. So most people know that AlphaGo beat the world champion in Go back in 2016. Few people know that human amateurs using standard computers beat the best Go programs a couple of years ago by exposing them to positions and concepts that they would not have picked up in training. And so if the world was just a static distribution of events, if the world didn't change, then that would not be really a problem. But the world is changing all the time. And so you need AI that's resilient, that is capable of performing reliably still as the state of the world changes. And we don't have that yet. And so we need those innovations, I think, to develop new and durable use cases.
You want to give us an example again?
So, first of all, any kind of work you do, you experiment, you try to figure out through iteration, right? And so, if I write a new article, for example, I can get the AI to do a literature review for me, but I can certainly not, get it to develop the new research question that I should be thinking about. And so, it's a question of dealing with novelty, and it's a question of doing the day-to-day work in a way that you acquire new skills.
Carl, what is India's best case scenario for AI? The reason I ask you this question is that India's AI minister, he's the information technology and electronics minister along with other portfolios, was put this question and he said India is investing, the overall investment in AI in India will be upwards of $150 billion, and he's very strongly pushed back against the claims that India is falling behind. In your expertise and your point of view, what is India's best case for AI?
So India does not need to be the technology leader to benefit from AI. Being a fast follower is enough. China has shown this with its doubling down on open source models and is doing very well because of that. And so you can do that without the same level of capital investment required. And then you can hedge your bets, because we don't know what the future of artificial intelligence is going to be like. Is it going to be large language models? Is it going to be small language models? Is it going to be symbolic AI? Is it going to be a fusion between the two? Is it going to be something else? And so over the past decade, we've been through this paradigm of scaling where we're throwing more compute and data at the problem and getting better performance. But we're now seeing that running into diminishing return. And so we're now back at the drawing board again. We're back at the paradigm of research. And so what India should do is be a fast follower in large language models by embracing open source, and then hedge your bets by doubling down on research, because we don't know which approach is going to be winning in the end of the day. And here the market is still open. If India takes its own course and makes the right bets, India could actually end up being a leader in AI even.
And
That's
also
a very
because,
good point.
And also because the sheer size of the Indian market, the sheer population out there consuming in a way data at the moment. Are you therefore saying that rather than India be in the race to create some new frontier AI models, India focuses on becoming the world's leading deployer in a way, given this large market of AI, let's say in public services and industry, use our demographic dividend through AI just to scale up? You don't necessarily need to be the innovator of new AI models. Am I broadly correct?
Yeah, so embrace open source, adopt open source in business process contexts where India has a lead, but then more broadly, don't bet everything on large language models. That is one approach, and it's far from clear that that is going to be the winning approach going forward. So double down on research at the same time. It's not just a question of deploying, because deployment means that the technology is mature and is performing well in a range of use cases. And right now, it's pretty useful for certain things, but as I mentioned earlier, not very reliable when it comes to unseen situations, for example.
Carl, I have one more question to ask you. The Moore's law, and you spoke about that right at the top of the conversation, and this debate about when AI will sort of match or exceed human intelligence. But I want to frame this question by asking you, what is the next breakthrough in this space that you yourself as a researcher and a scientist are looking forward to?
If I know the answer to that question, I mean, we're working on it, and I will certainly not tell anyone publicly. And so I think, if you go back to 1999, for example, right? Bessemer Venture famously declined to invest in Google, right? They probably regret it today, but, it also illustrates Google was not a safe bet at the time, right? Alta Vista and Yahoo were dominating search. And I think what that illustrates is that somebody needs to take the risk and invest in an approach to actually know what will catch on. And what you want is people taking different bets. If you go back to 1900, electric vehicles and gasoline-powered vehicles were essentially on par. Then you have huge oil discoveries and some improvements, technological improvements. It tips the balance in favor of the internal combustion engine. A century later, we're now trying to get back into electric vehicles again. And so, in a way, we made the wrong bet. And I think it's important to keep in mind that if you double down on one approach too early and you close down other parts of exploration, you may well end up being on the wrong trajectory.
Fascinating, fascinating, Professor. In this conversation, we've got a sense of just what lies ahead. And one of the things that lies ahead is uncertainty. I mean, I think that's very clear. It's not just uncertainty in the Trumpian world order. It's also uncertainty as to where AI really goes from now. Very quickly, a year from now, if you were back at Davos, what do you expect? Where do you expect AI to be? Would the bubble have burst, or will it be continuing to expand?
I think it's a 50-50 chance that the bubble has burst by next year. I think if that has happened, we're looking at a very different conversation around AI. Then I think we're firmly in the new paradigm of research. If it hasn't burst by next year, I think we're likely to have a similar conversation to what we're having now.
And of course, then there's the Chinese factor. We don't know what the Chinese will do next with AI, but they are clearly also very much in the race, and many believe ahead in that race, Professor. But great to have you joining us here at the World Economic Forum at the India Today Business Today studios. Professor Carl Benedikt Frey from Oxford University, giving us a sense of the various possibilities and also the concerns over the world's AI revolution. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor.